You paid more for groceries this month than last month. Your rent is up. Your car insurance is up. But turn on the TV and an economist will tell you inflation is only 3%. Somebody is lying. And today, I'm going to show you exactly who and why they'll never stop. I'm not talking about conspiracy theories. I'm not talking about shadowy figures in dark rooms. I'm talking about economists, the ones on your TV, the ones who work for the big banks and the government agencies, the ones with the calm voices and the PowerPoint slides. They know, and they've chosen silence. Let me explain something with a simple example. Imagine you're a doctor. You've just looked at your patient's test results, and you can see something serious is building up. But your patient is also your boss's biggest client, and your boss has told you, not directly, never directly, that nervous clients pull their money and leave. Do you tell the patient the truth? Or do you say, everything looks fine, come back in 6 months? This is the position most economists are in right now. Here's what's wild. In early 2026, economists at major institutions were still saying things looked reasonably decent. Then the Iran war started, tariffs escalated, food prices started surging, and suddenly, every model was being quietly revised behind closed doors. But on television, still calm, still measured, still, we're monitoring the situation. Mark Zandi, the chief economist at Moody's Analytics, one of the most respected voices in the field, warned publicly that America is close to the edge with a 40% recession risk, and that the economy has zero margin for any more shocks. The Wall Street Journal's survey of economists put recession risk at 33% for 2026, more than double the 15% you'd see in a healthy economy. 33% is not everything is fine. 33% is, I would not get on this plane. But you didn't hear that number in the headline. You heard, no recession expected. That's not an accident. That's a choice. And that choice has a very specific reason behind it. Who pays the economist? Here's the part nobody talks about. Think about your favorite sports commentator. They work for the TV channel. The TV channel pays for broadcast rights. The broadcast rights come from the league. So when something embarrassing happens in that sport, a scandal, a fix, a terrible call, how honest do you think that commentator is going to be? Economists work inside the same kind of system. The biggest employers of economists in America are banks, investment firms, and the government. J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, the Federal Reserve, the Treasury Department. These are not institutions that benefit from their own economists standing up and saying, this is about to fall apart. When Goldman Sachs economists predict the market, Goldman Sachs clients are making trades based on that prediction. When the Federal Reserve's economists give their outlook, the Federal Reserve's credibility is on the line. When a government economist speaks, the current administration's economic legacy is at stake. Nobody bites the hand that feeds them. And here's where it gets interesting. The economists who have spoken up historically, the ones who warned about the 2008 crisis years before it happened, people like Nouriel Roubini, were mocked, publicly, called doomsayers and alarmists. And then, when everything collapsed exactly the way they said it would, those same people who mocked them quietly moved on and never apologized. You've seen Don't Look Up. Scientists discover a comet heading straight for Earth, go on television to warn everyone, and get laughed off the stage. That movie wasn't science fiction. It was an economics documentary with better special effects. The lesson the entire profession learned from 2008 is being right too early is just as career damaging as being wrong. So the ones who keep saying risks remain elevated and nothing more, those are the ones who keep their jobs. So what exactly do they see? What is the thing sitting in those models that keeps getting quietly revised but never announced? Let me show you in plain language. Every economist knows about the CPI. That's the Consumer Price Index, the government's official inflation number. Right now, it's sitting around 3%, and that's what gets reported. But inside every serious economic institution, there's a second conversation happening. Because economists know that 3% number is built by averaging 80,000 different items together, from your groceries all the way to luxury yachts and designer handbags. Here's the issue with that. Rich people's spending pulls that average down. If a billionaire buys something that didn't go up in price, it offsets your eggs going up. The math looks calm. The reality isn't. Think of it like this. You're sitting in a bathtub. Half of it is filled with boiling hot water. The other half is ice cold. On average, the temperature is perfect, but you're only sitting in the hot half. The Ludwig Institute for Shared Economic Prosperity built a separate index tracking only the things working and middle-class people actually spend money on: rent, food, transport, healthcare. When they ran those numbers, the real cost of living for the bottom half of earners was more than double the official headline number. Double. Here's what that actually looks like in your shopping cart. Every serious economist knows this index exists. They know the gap is real. And right now, with food prices up more than 35% since 2015, according to USDA data alone, the actual squeeze on regular people is something those 3% headlines completely hide. They know this. They just don't lead with it. Because leading with it would require admitting that the economy is working extremely well for some people and extremely badly for most others. And that's a political statement nobody in an institution wants to make. The housing trap. They designed and won't explain. You know the movie Interstellar? There's a moment where Matthew McConaughey's character realizes the people sending the messages aren't from the future. They've been the ones in control the whole time. The answer was hidden inside the system. The housing market works like that. The trap was always built into the system, and the people who built it knew exactly what would happen next. Every economist understands exactly what happened. During the pandemic, rates were slashed to near zero. Millions of people locked in mortgages below 4%. In 2022, rates were hiked above 6% and kept there. The economists who designed that policy knew exactly what the side effect would be. Those homeowners now have a golden prison. If they sell, they have to buy again at the new high rates. Their monthly payment would jump by thousands of dollars, so they don't move. They stay locked in. The Federal Housing Finance Agency estimated that this effect alone prevented 1.72 million home sales between 2022 and 2024. 1.72 million homes that never hit the market, which means supply stayed artificially low, which means prices never corrected downward the way basic economics said they should. A median home now costs around $400,000. You need a six-figure income just to qualify. And houses are now sitting on the market for up to 68 days on average, because even at these prices, fewer people can actually buy. Economists understand every single mechanism of this trap. They can model it precisely. But the public conversation stays focused on mortgage rates as if they're just a neutral number, not the lever that locked an entire generation out of wealth building. The ones who designed the policy know what it did. The ones who study it know what it continues to do. And the polite version they give on television leaves out the most important sentence. This was predictable. It was predicted, and nothing was done about it. But here's where it gets darker. Because the housing trap and the inflation gap are things you can at least see if you're paying attention. What economists are really keeping quiet about is something underneath all of this. Something that doesn't show up on any public dashboard. You've seen The Walking Dead, right? Technically dead, still walking, still dangerous, and impossible to stop once there are enough of them. Economists have an actual term for this in the business world: zombie companies, and they've known about them for years. A zombie company is a business that makes just enough money to pay the interest on its debt, but never enough to actually pay the debt down. Think about that restaurant on your street. Same 3 tables every night. But somehow, they keep the lights on. They took a COVID loan. They've been rolling it forward ever since. Nobody asks questions. Until one day you walk past and the sign is gone. That's a zombie company. Now imagine that, but for businesses employing thousands of people. It needs to keep borrowing just to stay alive. Deutsche Bank estimated that as of 2020, 18% of publicly traded US companies were zombies. They employed 2.2 million people. Here's what's important. Economists who work inside the big banks and financial institutions have access to private credit data. They can see which companies are rolling debt forward, which ones are one bad quarter away from collapse. Economists call it extend and pretend. And nobody in a published report says this company is a zombie, and when rates stay high long enough, it falls. Even though that is exactly what the model shows, because the bank holding that company's debt doesn't want that in a published report, and the economist works for the bank. Right now, with interest rates elevated and tariff costs squeezing corporate margins simultaneously, more of these companies are approaching that cliff than at any point since 2008. Economists know where the edge is. The public doesn't even know there's a cliff. But here's the thing. Economists didn't just discover this cliff. They named what's on the other side of it. They published papers about it. They drew the chart. And then they described it like it was the weather, like nobody caused it, like nobody benefits from it. Let me show you what they named it and why naming it was the most dangerous thing they ever did. Here's something interesting. Economists actually did name what's happening. They called it the K-shaped economy. They published papers about it. They put it on charts. And then they explained it as if it was just a natural weather pattern, like inflation, just something that happens, nobody's fault. Draw the letter K. One line goes up, one line goes down. Think about two kids who grew up on the same street. One kid's parents own their house. Every year, it's worth more. The other kid's parents pay rent, and every year, that rent goes up. Same street, same school, 20 years later, completely different lives. That's the K. The upper half of earners, their wealth, their stocks, their home equity, going up. The lower half, their purchasing power, their savings, their ability to get ahead, going down. Baby boomers right now hold over $83 trillion in assets, more than half of all household wealth in America. The average boomer is worth around $1 million. Millennials and Gen Z combined, $17 trillion. 10.5% of total wealth for the two largest generations in history. Every economist looking at these numbers knows what they mean. They know that wealth compounds. People with assets buy more assets. People without assets rent from the people who have them. The K doesn't flatten over time. It gets sharper. That research exists. It goes to institutional clients, not to you. Because saying it out loud, saying the system is concentrating wealth at the top, and the economists who work for the institutions at the top know it and stay quiet about it. That's not a chart. That's an accusation. And nobody in this profession wants to be the one who makes it. So now you know what they know. What do you do with it? First thing, stop waiting for the official announcement. By the time economists publicly confirm that something is wrong, it's already been wrong in your neighborhood for months. The 2008 crash was officially declared a recession in December 2008. It had been destroying people's lives since early 2007. The announcement is always late. Second, remember that K we drew. One line goes up, one line goes down. The line going up is people who own things, a house, stocks, even a small investment account. The line going down is people who only earn a salary and spend it, money that buys less every year. You don't need to be rich to move to the right line. Even $50 a month into an index fund, a basket of companies you buy a tiny slice of, starts moving you in the right direction. That's it. That's the whole secret they don't teach in school. Third, be deeply skeptical of official numbers. Not because they're fake, but because you now understand how averages hide reality. When someone says inflation is 3%, ask yourself, 3% for whom? When someone says the economy added jobs, ask, what kind of jobs? At what wages? In which industries? The economists know how to ask those questions. They just don't always answer them for you. Fourth, understand that the silence isn't random. It has a structure. It protects specific interests. Knowing that structure means you can read between the lines of every financial headline you'll ever see from now on. None of these moves is a guarantee, but doing nothing is a guarantee too, just not the kind you want. The economists aren't clueless. They're quiet. There's a big difference between not knowing something and knowing it, and choosing who you share it with. The data exists. The models exist. The projections exist. They're just locked inside institutional reports written for clients who can act on them, not for you. Now you have the same picture they do. Drop a comment and tell me, do you think economists stay quiet because the system pressures them to, or because they genuinely think the truth would cause more panic than the problem itself? I want to read every single response. And if you want to see the specific mechanism that economists are most terrified of right now, the oil shock that could detonate everything we just talked about, that video is right here. Don't skip it.